Thank you to everyone for coming. We're very, very appreciative that you would take time out of your lovely afternoon and evening to come and spend time with us to learn about a topic that I think is very near and dear to a lot of our hearts. And the topic is nutrition and how it pertains to cancer. Because I think when you look around the room and you think about your own life, I'm sure we've all been touched by cancer, whether it's been a personal diagnosis, a diagnosis of a spouse or a loved one, a best friend, a teacher that played a special role in our lives. So cancer is everywhere, as we know. And I think sometimes cancer leaves us with this feeling of loss of control or helplessness, like once we get this diagnosis, just seems like the cards are stacked in our favor. No matter what we do, we really can't, make as powerful of an impact against it as what we would like. But I think that's where we want to kind of put that ideal to rest, because we want to make sure that everyone realizes that knowledge is empowering, and the more knowledge that we have in our ability to fight cancer, prevent cancer, or to be able to beat cancer, which I'm not really fond of those words because they seem so negative to me. Fighting, beating, I don't know, overcoming seems so much more, joyful. But I think if we can just learn a few things as it pertains to a topic that is so ingrained in our everyday lives, nutrition. I mean, it's something that you can't get any more basic than that. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking because we have some phenomenal speakers that I cannot wait to introduce. But I just want to start out with a statistic. The American Cancer Society has estimated that about 1/3 of the 600,000 cancer deaths that occurred in 2012 could have been related to factors such as obesity or being overweight, physical inactivity, and poor nutrition. And if this is true, then maybe some of these cancer deaths could have been prevented. Unfortunately, we cannot change the genetic material that we inherit. So if we inherit a genetic tendency to develop cancer, then those cards are the ones that have been dealt to us. But there's a phenomenon called epigenetics, which is not just looking at our genetic DNA as a risk factor for developing cancer, but what is going on in the soil, so to speak, in our when it comes to the food that we put in our body, the air that we breathe, whether or not we smoke, how much alcohol do we drink, how much stress we're under, are we exposed to tons of pesticides, do we live on a golf course, do we spray our homes? So the epigenetic phenomena is what else may be going on in our lifestyle that has an impact on changing our genetic predisposition to developing cancer. And nutrition is one of those that very much is in our control. So no one really tells you what you have to put at the end of your fork. You can decide that. And what we want to try to relay this evening is try to give you some tools is to make better choices as to what you put at the end of your fork. So we are very honored to have some speakers from the Cancer Treatment Centers of America with us tonight. We have Kristen Trukova, and Kristen is a clinical oncology dietitian. Kristen earned her master's degree in nutritional sciences from Eastern Michigan University. As part of her thesis, she studied vitamin D deficiency and vitamin D, whether vitamin D repletion benefited breast cancer patients. Prior to her graduate studies, she received a bachelor's degree in dietetics from the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana. And she completed a dietetic internship at California State University, Long Beach. She is a member of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and she has been serving patients at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America since 2004. So, thank you. And then Debrah Harding. Debrah Harding is a naturopathic oncology provider, and she will explain a little bit more about what a naturopathic provider does as opposed to a more of a traditionally trained Western medicine provider. I'm fascinated by naturopathic medicine. She graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Environmental Studies from Richard Stockton College of New Jersey. She earned a doctorate degree in naturopathic medicine from the National College of Natural Medicine in Portland, Oregon. You have a very interesting background. I love it. Prior to her position at Cancer Treatment Center, she served patients at a natural health clinic she founded in Marlton, New Jersey. She also gained experience as a naturopathic medicine provider at a natural medicine clinic in Frederick, Maryland, and an integrative medical clinic in Portland, Oregon. She has taught naturopathic, nursing, and osteopathic medical students for the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, University of Pennsylvania, and National College of Natural Medicine. She was recently appointed as a Fellow of the American Board of Naturopathic Oncology, and she has been serving cancer patients at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America since 2010. So I am in awe. So I appreciate you both being here. Just a couple of housekeeping items I do not want to forget. Obviously, I always want to thank our staff for all of their selfless work in getting all of these classes put together. Leslie in particular put a lot of time and effort in making this happen. We will have a raffle drawing at the end, so make sure everyone has signed up for the raffle. The only other thing I don't want to forget to mention is our next cooking class. It's teaching healthy cooking and healthy nutrition for our kids and our grandkids. It's still going to take place. It will not be at Hy-Vee though. So we will keep you posted as to where the location has been changed to. But it's still going to take place, and Susan Waltrip, that wonderful dietitian that works there, will hopefully still be doing it. So, okay, without further ado.
Thank you so much, Dr. Couri, for the wonderful introduction, and thank you to everyone for helping make this a success this evening and for inviting us to your center. It's just truly refreshing to see the integrative approach being presented and being offered in such a wonderful way that it's really easy to adopt a healthy lifestyle rather than being something that's a barrier that's more challenging. So thanks for inviting us here this evening, and I'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Kristen, and I'm a dietitian at Cancer Treatment Centers. I've been there almost 10 years now, and I really enjoy working in that kind of environment because we're actually able to help people through a difficult diagnosis. We work with our patients to help them choose foods that are going to help to reduce the risk of cancer progressing or recurring. We work with our patients to manage side effects and choose foods that might help them to optimize their nutrition throughout treatment. So this is a real treat to really focus on what we can do to prevent cancer. And I chose my title pretty carefully because I do really mean that I want all of you to be enjoying life. As we're choosing foods more wisely and as we're trying to move our body more, it really shouldn't be a burden or feel that you're restricting yourself or that you're not enjoying all of your favorite things. So I do want you to think about how you can enjoy some of these fresh foods and enjoy being active without it being just one more thing that you've got to do that you don't really enjoy. So we'll go ahead and move forward. And of course, I mean, we do need to focus on cancer prevention because unfortunately it is still a really big concern for our society. We know it's the second leading cause of death in the United States, second only to heart disease. People, die every day. It's unfortunately about 1,600 people per day in the entire United States, and 65 people in Illinois perish from cancer every single day. So many of us have been touched by cancer, and this is some information that we could use for our own personal use, but also for our family and friends. So we've come to understand that when we think about lifestyle and cancer, as Dr. Couri mentioned, we know that about 30% of cancer is actually related to our lifestyle, and that's from these three components here. So that's nutrition or diet, physical activity and movement, and also our body weight. So these three things is what I'm going to focus on my talk on today. And we first want to understand a little bit about how our lifestyle actually affects our cancer risk. And I think it's just truly fascinating that though we can't change our genes, we can actually change what genes are expressed, what genes are turned on or turned off by how much we move our bodies and exercise, by how many plant foods we choose to consume to get more antioxidants into our system, by limiting the amount of less healthful foods and therefore limiting potential damage. And also by carrying as little weight as possible without being underweight to reduce the inflammation and stress to our body. So through this graph, you can see that, cancer may develop over, 10, 20 years or even longer. And it starts from small damage to normal healthy cells, because we know that a cancer cell is really a healthy cell that just was damaged and mutated over time and eventually grew into a tumor that was growing uncontrollably. So what's fascinating to me is that the many steps along this process, maybe at year 5, maybe you start doing a lot more healthful behaviors, you begin exercising, you start eating, great big salads or stir fries at many of your meals. You can actually stop that damaged cell growth right where it's at, and maybe then it's never going to continue to progress on. So the great thing is that, we're never going to be eating perfect or exercising as much as we should possibly, but there's a lot that we can do to help slow damage and even reverse some damage. So we're first going to focus on food, and we know that food can affect cancer risk either directly or indirectly. Food can directly affect our cancer risk when we consume more plant foods. What's fascinating is that many plant foods have antioxidants, phytochemicals, vitamins, and minerals that can actually bind to damaging molecules called free radicals. So if we look up here on the right side corner, the red molecule is a free radical, and antioxidants, say from broccoli or kale or berries or kiwi, can actually bind to the free radical that enters our body and bind with it, thereby preventing it from actually damaging a healthy cell. So stopping that damage before it even happened. We also know that plant foods can actually help our bodies repair DNA. So rather than a healthy cell becoming damaged and continuing to make more damaged cells, it's repaired and therefore it's returning to its healthful state. We also know that many antioxidants, for example, fruits and vegetables rich in vitamin A, like carrots, sweet potatoes, peaches, or cantaloupe, can actually stimulate the natural killer cells of our immune system, thereby getting rid of any damaged cells that are already out there. So that's a pretty important thing. We also know that healthful plant foods can decrease inflammation in the body, and we're starting to see more and more research about inflammation and working to reduce inflammation, which may lead to increased risk of chronic disease. Food can also indirectly affect our cancer risk by affecting body weight. We encourage people to consume as many plant foods as possible, specifically fruits and vegetables, because fruits and vegetables are the lowest calorie food choices that are available to us. So by consuming those, of course, all the nutritious compounds, but also water and fiber really help us to feel satisfied with a good amount of food, but actually a low calorie food choice. So helping us to stay at a healthy weight. Also, eating the right portion of foods is really critical. It's not that some food should never be consumed again, but when we know, it's our birthday and we're going to have a special dessert or a treat, eating the right portion of that food is the right way to enjoy that food and truly savor it and enjoy it, but not to consume a huge amount of it. And finally, choosing more plant foods helps us to crowd out some of the less healthful foods in the diet. So even if you're in a situation where, you're maybe not consuming foods that might be the most healthful choice, having a big salad with it, having a big serving of fruit is going to help you to have a balanced meal and still provide a lot of antioxidants to really support your body and limit damage. So what's the evidence that nutrition can actually help our bodies prevent cancer? I mean, I would say there's many great thinkers out there that have, been talking about nutrition and diet, for hundreds and thousands of years. And we know, of course, what we put into our bodies is going to be directly related to the health that we receive and our continued healthy state. But in 1981, researchers were actually able to put a number on it, and they said, 35% of all cancers are directly related to poor diet choices. So again, that's maybe only 35%, but if you add in movement and limiting our exposures to environmental toxins and many other things that may be within our control, that really does add up. So we do get a lot of research and information from the World Cancer Research Fund, which is partnered with the American Institute for Cancer Research. These are both nonprofit organizations made up of many scientists that over the last nearly 20 years now, they've reviewed nearly a million studies relating diet and cancer. And when we think about, just one research study being just one part of the puzzle, sometimes if you just have one puzzle piece, it's really hard to see what that picture might be. But by summarizing all those research studies together, we can get a really good idea of what foods are going to be the most important to eat and what foods might be the most damaging to our bodies and foods to limit. So their recommendations is what we're going to focus on today. I'll briefly skip the recipe and come right back to it. We are going to have some recipes for you guys to sample at the end of our talks today. So the AICR recommendations from 2007, I've selected 4 that I think are the most pertinent for our talk this evening. If you go on their website to aicr.org, that's a great website with lots of information, recipes, research updates, and good information. And you'll be able to see all 12 recommendations. But the first recommendation that I wanted to highlight is to eat foods mostly of plant origin. So this does not mean that you need to become a vegetarian or a vegan, although those are very healthful lifestyles to adopt. It just means you want to eat as many plants as possible on a daily basis. So I've separated these plants into about 3 groups: fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and then beans and nuts. And for each food, we want to think about, well, how much do I actually want to consume? So these are minimum goals. Of course, you can definitely be eating more plants than this, and that's going to be ever so much more nutritious for your body. But a minimum goal for health and cancer prevention would start with 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. And that can really be any combination. Some days you may have access to more veggies, other days more fruits. But for example, 3 servings of vegetables, 2 servings of fruits. And a serving is about a half of a cup for most of your raw or cooked fruits or vegetables. For leafy salads, a serving is actually 1 cup just because it's a little bit airier and fluffier. For most produce, 1/2 cup. And that would be 2.5 measuring cups of total produce for the whole day. Ideally, you want to consume most of your produce raw, but there are some situations in which steaming or roasting your vegetables can actually bring out some more of the nutrients and make them more absorbable for your body. So a good combination between the raw and cooked is always a good goal. Secondly, when we focus on whole grains, of course, ideally, if all of our grains were whole grains, that would be a wonderful thing just because of the fiber, the antioxidants that are contained in whole grains that you really can't find in any fruit or vegetable. There's actually a good amount of protein in your whole grains as well, and also the B vitamins that are naturally occurring. So 3 servings per day is the minimum, things such as 1 slice of bread, 3/4 cup of dry cereal, 1/2 cup of wild or brown rice, 1/2 cup of whole grain pasta, 1/2 cup of quinoa or millet or some of our other grains out there as well would count. So choose the grain that you enjoy best, just make it whole. Some ways to find whole grains is to look for that number 100% whole grain, either on the package or to look on the ingredient list. Sometimes I think that's an easier way to get the right information because sometimes the flashy marketing can be a little bit misleading. But the first ingredient should say whole grain corn, whole grain wheat, whole grain quinoa, and that should be the first ingredient. The last recommendation for our plant foods would be that we want to consume beans and nuts each about 3 times per week. So 3 servings of any type of bean per week. That could be garbanzos, black beans, white or kidney beans. It could be lentils. And that could be something that you prepare as part of a bean dip. That could be something like beans on your salad or in a wrap, or something as simple as rice and beans. The serving for beans would be 1/2 cup, just like your fruits and vegetables. And for nuts, we encourage you to consume raw nuts as a snack. Maybe a nut butter such as peanut butter or almond butter. But keep in mind the serving for nuts is 1/4 cup, which is about a golf ball size. And that's a little bit smaller just because nuts are packed with really nutritious calories, healthy fats, but the calories do add up quickly. So try and keep it to about a golf ball size. And also it's helpful too. I mean, healthy fat keeps us satisfied longer, so you're not reaching for another snack in 30 minutes. So I'll briefly highlight our two recipes and that you're going to get samples of a little bit later. The quinoa salad is with chicken, grapes, and almonds. And basically, I don't know if you've heard about quinoa, but it's really difficult to spell it if you've only heard the word. So it's spelled quinoa, but you say it quinoa. And it's actually a really nice ancient grain. It's actually a complete protein, so it's got the same amino acid components as any of your animal foods, and as soy. It's also a great source of fiber, and it's almost 100% found as a whole grain. So the great thing about quinoa is that you can actually substitute it equally for rice in any recipe. It uses the same amount of water and cooking time, which is really nice if you're not very comfortable with quinoa, if you just haven't used it much. So in this recipe, you're going to be cooking the quinoa. You can already go ahead and cook your chicken, or this could be a nice option if you've already got leftovers of cooked chicken from the night before. So maybe something for a quick weeknight dinner, or even just something to quick throw together for a lunch. So it's also using just sliced grapes and sliced almonds, and just tossing these things together with a light vinaigrette dressing. So vinegar, olive oil, a little salt and pepper, and going back quickly just to the summery bean salad. This is a bean salad that's going to contain the black beans, chopped avocados, and also chopped strawberries. Again, tossed lightly with a vinaigrette dressing. And I think this is a really nice option to take to a picnic or a cookout, because sometimes when you go to these events, you're not finding the most healthful options, but this helps make sure that you've got something that's healthful to enjoy, but you might also be offering people an option that might be more healthful that they've never tried before, but they might find out, wow, I really enjoy this. And it's something simple that you can throw together. So definitely, trying to start with the dry beans, or also using canned beans if you do rinse them really well, tossing it lightly with the dressing to marinate the flavors together for about 15 to 20 minutes. So the next recommendation that I'd like to highlight is the need to limit red meat, but also to limit processed meats. And this is really important that we limit these. It's not something that's seen as something we must avoid forever, but sometimes it's how often we consume that can really improve our cancer risk. So red meats do include beef, pork, and lamb. I know we traditionally sometimes think of the pork as the other white meat because of the marketing campaign, which is probably one of the most effective in world history. But unfortunately, nutritionally, pork does count as a red meat. The recommendation is to consume 4 4-ounce servings of red meat per week. They often say that a woman's palm is about 4 ounces. So another option first to make small changes in your diet is to make sure that you're just eating the right portion of meat. Even if you're eating more meat more often than 4 times per week, a first step might be taking down that portion from 6 ounces just down to 4 ounces and thinking about it that way. Other options include thinking about where you really most enjoy the red meat in your diet and swapping out areas in which you might not notice it so much. So the example might be if you love steak, keep your small serving of steak, but maybe swap out ground turkey for ground beef in your taco or your chili recipe, where you've got a lot of other flavors that are exciting and you might not notice that change. The second recommendation is to limit processed meats, and processed meats usually are things that are preserved. So a lot of our breakfast meats, bacon, sausage, Canadian bacon, ham, many of our deli meats, and bratwurst, sausage and hot dogs, or pepperoni. And the recommendation is as little as possible. So, why are we having this recommendation? Why can't I have my breakfast with bacon and eggs every single morning? We always want to make sure we're doing this for a research-based reason. And a Harvard study recently found that for people that were consuming more than 2 servings per day of red meat had a 30% higher risk of cancer than those people that ate less than a half serving per day. So unfortunately, this is something that's kind of easy to do if you start out with sausage at breakfast and have a ham sandwich for lunch. You haven't even gotten to dinner yet. So it's really thinking about, what do I most enjoy my day and what small modifications can I make? So the reasons that red meat can increase cancer risk involve the saturated fat and cholesterol content. So it's always a great choice to choose sirloin, top round, eye of round, or filet mignon when we choose red meats, because those are red meats that are much lower in saturated fat and cholesterol compared to some of the other cuts. Or choosing the highest percentage lean of ground meat, 90 or higher, specifically 93 or 95% when you choose ground meats. We also know that red meats do have a high iron content, and iron, of course, is something that we can be missing from our diets, but we find that when we have a really high intake of red meat over time, we know that iron can also cause oxidative damage or work as a free radical molecule. So just kind of too much of a good thing is something to think about. And then the nitrates or nitrates is what you're going to see on the label of the processed meats. That's a really great preservative for our deli meats and bacon and sausage and hot dogs. So I am seeing a lot more products coming out that are nitrate free, and there are many great brands that offer that. You just want to check the ingredient list. It's usually the last item on the ingredient list, so you can quickly determine if it's got nitrates or not. Also, products that are nitrate free usually have that splashed over the label because that's a big marketing tool for the health benefit. Finally, we know that processed meats are pretty salty, but it's also the way that we cook our red meats that can also increase these cancer-promoting compounds. You may have heard of the heterocyclic amines, or HCAs, or the PAHs, which are the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. So these are two compounds that are just caused by when we cook any type of protein at using a dry cooking method at a high heat temperature. So this pretty much means grilling or pan frying, and the longer we cook our meat, the more of these compounds are formed. And these compounds are only formed in proteins. So if you're consuming fish or poultry or red meat, these compounds can be formed. If you're grilling a vegetable or of any sort, these compounds won't be formed because they don't contain protein. So one study did find that women that consume more well-done meats had a much higher risk of breast cancer than women who did not consume a lot of well-done meat. So of course, food safety, still important. Don't consume a lot of unsafe or undercooked meat. But one recommendation is to really focus on moist cooking methods, maybe baking, roasting, boiling, or poaching. Or also, when we think about baking, it may be a little bit drier method, but baking brings the temperature of that protein up much more slowly, and therefore you don't see these compounds formed as much. One of my favorite ways to get around these compounds is to marinate foods, because many studies have found that when we marinate our food prior to grilling it or pan frying it or cooking it in any way, you actually prevent these compounds from being formed by 95%, which is really exciting because I think that grilling is really fun, and it's something that's outdoorsy, and we can actually enjoy our summer weather here in Illinois, and it also it brings a lot more flavor to the meat, so helps us enjoy some of this without the added detriment of these compounds. So you can use any type of marinade. Of course, fresh made would be best, but they find that between 15 and 30 minutes of marinating prior to cooking will provide this benefit. You could also pre-cook your meats, maybe by baking them halfway and then grilling them, but sometimes marinating is a little bit more flavorful way to do it. But either would work. And the next recommendation we'd like to talk about is sugary drinks. And I really don't think it's shocking to anyone that sugary drinks are not a health food. But unfortunately, consumption of sugary drinks have really gone up exponentially in the last 30 years. And unfortunately, the consumption of sugary drinks has kind of matched the trend of rising obesity in the United States and really around the world as well. So I'm really promise that I'm not picking just on Coke here. Of course, Pepsi or RC Cola or any soda of choice would provide the same detriment to the body. So again, when we think about sugary beverages, they don't actually only include soda. They also include sweet tea, fruit drinks, fruit juices if they're consumed in excess, sweetened coffee drinks, and also sports and energy drinks. So if you're doing intense exercise, of course, having a sport drink is a good choice, but as a regular beverage, it might not be the best choice. When you consume fruit juices, we really recommend that you stick to 100% fruit juice, and also to stick to the portion of just 4 ounces per day. So if you're familiar with those little juice glasses, they do look tiny to us now with all these huge cups that are out there, but the little juice glass is really the way to go. We find that sugary drinks can actually increase our cancer risk because they provide a lot of extra junk calories that really help us to gain weight pretty effectively. Unfortunately, it's really easy to drink a lot of sugary beverage calories without actually feeling satiated or full. It's pretty simple to consume 600 or 800 calories or more of sugary beverages within a day, but still be able to eat regular full meals in addition to that. Whereas, of course, if you're consuming regular meals, it's really hard to go and eat another huge meal an hour later. We also find that excessive sugar intake can actually also increase risk of insulin because, of course, our body needs insulin to help process all that sugar and get it to the cells and out of the bloodstream. So what we know about insulin, we often think about diabetes, but insulin can actually work as a growth factor in the body. So what's concerning is when we have a lot of sugar coming in, a lot of insulin being secreted to deal with it, we can have promotion of growth of some unwanted cells or some uncontrolled cell growth, possibly relating to cancer growth too. The last recommendation I'd like to highlight in the area of food is alcohol. And the American Cancer Society just recommends that women consume no more than 1 drink per day and men consume no more than 2 drinks per day of alcohol. We of course know that alcohol may not be a health food. I mean, there's definitely some benefits to alcohol that's been seen recently. Not enough health benefit to begin drinking if you don't already drink. So keep that in mind. Yes, but unfortunately alcohol does increase cancer risk for the tissues of the body that it touches as it's processed. So of course mouth, voice box or pharynx, liver and esophageal cancers are increased by excessive alcohol intake. And you can see the statistics for 1 drink per day, it's about a 9% increase in cancer risk, but for more heavy or moderate drinking, a 41% increase in cancer risk with 2 to 5 drinks per day. There's also a probable increase in risk for breast and colorectal cancer. And with breast cancer, there's a specific link with estrogen-related breast cancer because we know that when we consume estrogen, it actually encourages our body to, when we consume alcohol, it encourages our body to produce more estrogen. And if that continues over time, that could lead to a higher estrogen level. So moving back to our 3-part approach to cancer prevention and lifestyle, we're going to move a little bit to physical activity at this point. And we want to understand, well, how does physical activity actually affect our cancer risk? Well, first we know that physical activity and exercise of any sort helps to decrease hormones that encourage cell growth. So again, when we view cancer as uncontrolled cell growth, that's something that we want to limit. I have this nice little picture, which is a little bit hard to see here, but of course we know that exercise also releases a lot of beneficial endorphins that can help to reduce stress and improve well-being and just help us feel good about ourselves, which is a pretty important part too. We know that exercise can reduce insulin resistance, and sometimes we think of that in the area of diabetes, but that's important to cancer because we've learned that insulin is also something that can encourage cell growth. And finally, the most simplest option is that it helps bring our calories back in balance. I don't know anybody that eats perfect every single day or eats the right portion every single day, but the best tool we have is being able to move a little bit more to fix up that difference so that we're a little bit closer to our goal. So when we talk about physical activity and movement, what do we want to do? And basically you want to do as much as possible, but what's recommended as far as minimum for health is 150 minutes per week, and that's 5 days per week, 30 minutes of some type of activity. And it just needs to be moderate activity, which is listed on the left here. That's something as simple as walking, dancing, gardening, light housework and things of that sort, or chasing after children or grandchildren, or light building or carrying and things like that. So it doesn't have to be huge, crazy exercise at the gym or some type of triathlon process, although it could be. The 150 minutes is also equivalent to doing 75 minutes weekly of really vigorous exercise. And so this is your running, biking, swimming, class at the gym kind of exercise where your heart rate is really up and you're definitely sweating. I have the American Cancer Society up there as well because 2 years ago they came out with guidelines for cancer survivors. They had just had 3 guidelines: maintain a healthy weight, eat a lot of plants, and move your body a minimum of 150 minutes per week. So for them to come out with just 3 guidelines as far as what they can most do to help cancer never come back again, I thought that was pretty powerful. So moving your body more can be as simple as trying to get that 30 minutes every single day. And research shows that you can break that up into 10-minute increments, 15-minute increments all at once. Some research does show that if you spread it out through the day, that is more beneficial to your body than in one chunk. But the real key is just to move more in whichever way you can do so. Unfortunately, right now we are not meeting our activity goals, and a lot of that just has to do with how our society is set up. It's so easy to drive everywhere, and oftentimes, just like right now, we're forced to sit down, and we can't be up and doing jumping jacks while we're focusing on our tasks at work or using the computer. So, a quarter of adults actually report no leisure time physical activity. Less than half of adults actually meet that goal of 150 minutes per week. And unfortunately, our children are also not meeting this goal. So actually, less than 40% of children meet activity goals for children. And it's actually a little bit different for kids. I mean, we all know that children are pretty active, but they actually require more activity than adults do. So it's actually 1 hour of moderate activity per day and 3 times per week some really vigorous activity. So this is where we can think about, how can we engage our family and friends in this? We all know that we're more successful at doing almost anything if we have a buddy or other people that are going to say, hey, are we going to meet up and go do this? Or it's a lot more fun with other people too. So it just kind of highlights how everybody can benefit and how we can be more successful at it with a group approach. So we also know that breast cancer, colorectal cancer, endometrial cancer, and prostate cancer are the cancers or the risk that's most decreased by moving our bodies more. And finally, focusing on our third area, which is weight. We do know that overweight and obesity do actually contribute to almost 20% of all cancer death, which is a big amount, especially when 66% of Americans are overweight or obese, and actually 30% are obese. And unfortunately, this trend is actually continuing across the globe. It's not just America anymore that's dealing with this crisis. It's a little bit of everybody. This graph was a little bit shocking when I first looked at it because it actually breaks it down by cancer type. So on the left, it's the type of cancer. In the middle, that's the percentage of that type of cancer that could be eliminated or at least significantly reduced by staying at a healthy weight. And then on the far right, it breaks it up into the actual numbers. So what I thought was most shocking is the cancer of endometrial cancer. Nearly 50% of endometrial cancer could be reduced just by staying at a healthy weight. So the cancers aren't in any particular order, but 35% of esophageal cancer, 20% of pancreatic cancer, 16 and 17% of colorectal and breast cancers. It's a pretty huge number, and that really added up to about 116,000 deaths every single year in the United States could be prevented just by staying at a healthy weight. So pretty shocking numbers. So how does this extra weight actually increase our risk? And basically it boils down to 2 things, to excess hormones in our body and inflammation. And what was really surprising to researchers as they started to determine this link in the last 10 to 20 years is that unfortunately our fat tissue doesn't just sit there. It's actually metabolically active, and it actually releases hormones that encourage inflammation in our body. And an increase in inflammation in the body over time leads to a higher risk of chronic diseases. We've been talking a lot about insulin, and we also know that when we're overweight, we have higher levels of insulin in the body, therefore also being more potential growth factor for abnormal cells. Again, more specifically to cancers of the breast and endometrium and ovary, we also know that fat tissue also produces estrogen. So again, over time, a higher level of estrogen may translate to increased risk of these cancers. And finally, just in general, higher levels of inflammation are seen in people with a higher body weight. So unfortunately, I think, for whatever reason, I think we already have a lot of emphasis on weight, and I would encourage you all to kind of step back and not think so much about numbers on the scale and, why can't the scale go the right way that I want it, because it never seems to go the right way as quickly as we'd like it to. But I would really encourage you to put as much emphasis as possible on choosing the right foods as carefully as possible every single meal, every single day, and choosing to move your body as much as possible every single day. And I think if we take the stress off that number on the scale and focus on food and activity, that weight number is slowly going to come to the right place. And that kind of takes that away from the equation a little bit. So I'd really encourage all of you to think about the area of movement and nutrition, and think about just one thing that you'd like to change. That could be a food that you want to eat more of. That could be a food that you think, wow, I'm just really motivated to maybe eat less of this food right now. Maybe not eliminate it, but to really reduce what I'm currently taking in. And also one goal to figure out how movement could be a bigger part of your day, whether that's walking or taking a class at the gym, or simply just taking the stairs in your building as often as possible throughout the day, getting up to talk to colleagues colleagues instead of emailing or calling. But just small things, I mean, they do truly add up. So I would encourage you to focus on those. You'll see in your bags, you do have a little sheet of paper from AICR, which is kind of a nice little checkbox for the food goals. It goes through the different foods as far as how often you eat them, and you can figure out where you are and where you'd like to go next. So thank you all so much, and I'm going to turn it over to Deb now.
Hello. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. And thank you so much for coming out tonight. I'm really honored to be practicing in medicine at a time when so many people are joining forces to change the paradigm of healthcare towards a more holistic model. And doctors like Dr. Couri here are providing progressive medical care, and people of all walks of life and all medical disciplines are joining forces to really change the way that we receive and offer care. And it's just nice to be a part of it. And also to the interested laypersons who also want this progressive care, kudos to you, because together we're really changing the way that Americans get health care and the way that we care for ourselves. So, great. So, I'm a naturopathic physician, and you might be wondering, what the heck is that? So I'm going to talk a little bit about my training and what that is. I'm also going to get to the good stuff, which is what are some well-researched natural medicine supplements. And also after that, we'll discuss some lifestyle suggestions that are anti-cancer in nature. So what is a naturopath? A naturopath is trained primarily as a primary care family practitioner. And we're trained in using natural therapies such as herbs, homeopathy, nutrition, diet, and body work. And we're trained to use them as medicine. A little bit about our training. It's a 4-year postgraduate professional training program. The first 2 years are chock full of basic sciences, such as those that you see here. After 2 years, there's a basic science board exam. It's very comparable to medical school training. My sister is in osteopathic medical school, and we had the same required book list, and she just mailed me all of her books. It's very helpful. After 2 years, it's more clinical training and naturopathic modality training, 1,200 hours of direct patient care, 500 patient contacts, 264 hours of observing with licensed physicians, as well as naturopathic training modalities, such as the ones I mentioned earlier. It's a busy 4-year program. There are residency positions following those 2 years. Our hospital has a 2-year cancer residency. For new graduates, there's also family practice residencies, environmental medicine, and cardiology residencies as well. Naturopathic doctors aren't licensed in every state, which is probably why you may not have heard of us. Currently, we're only licensed in 18 states, and they're listed here. Part of the problem with licensure is that it takes each state's population an effort to go to the legislator and get it written into the law. So if you are passionate about natural medicine and or a friend of someone in the legislature, please contact the Illinois Association, which is listed here, number 2, the ILANP. It's in pink, but it is the Illinois Association of Naturopathic Physicians, who are working very hard to try to get Illinois licensed. The initial listing here is the American Association of Naturopathic Physicians, and the naturopathic doctors with board certifications in oncology are listed third there. That's the ONC-AMP, if you or someone you know would like the services of someone who has special training for naturopathic oncology. Natural medicine supplements, can they prevent cancer? Well, let's take a look at some studies and see. Green tea. Everyone has heard of green tea for anti-cancer benefit. That looks lovely. The most abundant compound in green tea is EGCG. It's a catechin of green tea. And in the center here, you can see that that green dot is the compound. And all of those boxes surrounding it are all processes that green tea affects that are cancer preventative. And so there have been hundreds and hundreds of studies on green tea and its cancer prevention properties. Most of those studies are cell studies and animal studies, which we would call preclinical studies. But a lot of promise in these studies. The human studies that there are have shown benefits. In particular, epidemiological studies have shown that in large groups of people, those that consume 8 to 12 cups of green tea a day have a reduction in many incidences of cancer, many types of cancer. There was a 2010 study that showed no reduction in risk of breast cancer with green tea consumption of 5 cups a day. So there are other studies also that show that the higher amounts of green tea consumption have the most benefit. And these studies are being done in Asian, primarily, populations, which consume a lot of green tea. In 2 large studies of Japanese women who are green tea drinkers, those who consumed 5 to 8 cups of green tea showed a statistically significant reduction of risk of recurrence in stage 1 and stage 2 breast cancers. So that's folks who already have cancer who drink a lot of green tea can reduce their risk of recurrence. And those are both statistically significant changes in those studies. So that's exciting news. So who here drinks 5 to 8 cups of green tea a day? All right. Well, for the Americans in the room, we do have capsules that show benefit as well. That's right. And this is a good product. This is the brand that we use a lot at our hospital, but many brands can be good. I'll tell you what to look for in your green tea capsule. 275 milligram capsule is equivalent to 2 to 3 cups a day, and the 2 or the 3 might depend on the polyphenol content. If it has around 95% polyphenols, it's more like 3 cups a day. If it has around 80 or 85%, it's more like 2 cups a day. Each capsule generally contains just a tiny bit of caffeine, from 0.5 to 3 milligrams. If you have a coffee, for example, a Starbucks tall coffee has about 300 milligrams of coffee, and a regular cup of green tea generally about 30 to 70 milligrams. So not very much caffeine, but a tiny bit. It's best to get an organic supplement. Most of the green tea is grown in areas where there is high concentrations of solvents and heavy metals. So it's definitely good to get a brand that either tests for those or is solidly organic. So in our short list of things that have a lot of data on them for being anti-cancer, green list is in it. One of the ones for women's health that's kind of surprising is ginkgo. So how many here have heard of ginkgo for memory? Everybody, it's the memory herb, right? But actually there have been quite a bit of studies on ginkgo in prevention for ovarian cancer. In 2007, there was a review article of all these studies. And the preclinical data showed that the compounds of quercetin and ginkgolide showed significant anti-proliferative effects in serous ovarian cancer cells. And when they did a clinical trial of women who used ginkgo regularly, it was found that 1.6% of over 600 women who used ginkgo developed ovarian cancer versus 4.2% of controls who did not. While this number might seem slight, it's actually statistically significant for a disease that we need all the help that we can get to prevent. Okay? Both of these studies show that, or all of these studies show that a better benefit in serous ovarian cancer cells rather than mucinous types of ovarian cancer. And genetic mutations which affect your degree of risk factor of getting ovarian cancer would also affect the non-mucinous or also produce a non-mucinous type of ovarian cancer. So this is something that those with the genetic predisposition to get ovarian cancer can use and have perhaps some benefit. So moving on into the other causes of cancer where natural medicine can really help out, I'm going to talk a little bit about lifestyle factors. And one of the biggest ones is environmental toxin exposure. One study says that environmental component is implicated in about 80% of all cancers. So all of these things are fairly ubiquitous in our environment, though we try our hardest not to be exposed to them. These compounds are found in breast milk every day in high amounts and alarming amounts. What can we do about it? Cigarette smoking is a known carcinogen. Cigarette smoking causes 443,000 cancer deaths a year, even 49,000 cancer deaths related to secondhand smoke exposure. Smoking doesn't just cause lung cancer, as you know. It's a risk factor for many other types of cancer. Cancers of the throat, the mouth, the nasal cavity, the esophagus, the stomach, the pancreas, kidney, bladder, leukemia, and cervix. And we see all these folks with these cancers here at the hospital. So giving up smoking is something that's empowering, something that's worthwhile. But what about everything else? Well, wait, one more thing before I move to everything else. The good news on that is that smoking rates are the lowest that they've been in the last 15 years. Yay! And policy analysts cite that the main reason for this trend is an increase in bans in public smoking, colleges, casinos, restaurants, as well as an increase in price. In New York City, for example, it's $12 for a pack of cigarettes.
Oh.
Yeah, which is great. And people can't afford to smoke 2 to 3 packs anymore. It's also illegal to smoke in a city park. People caught smoking get a $50 fine in Central Park. So that's great. But if you're not smoking and you're doing your best to eliminate all your toxicity exposure, there is something internally you can do. And one of the most powerful detoxification antioxidants in the body that we have is a substance called glutathione. And there are a lot of natural medicine interventions you can do to raise your own glutathione, which is your detoxifying antioxidant. So glutathione is made of 3 simple blocks, and they are amino acid blocks, which is cysteine, glycine, and glutamine. And the secret power of the molecule is that when those combine, it also has a sulfur chemical group at the end, and the sulfur group acts like sticky paper, and toxins and mercury and heavy metals stick to the sulfur group, and then the body recycles them into more harmless compounds. So glutathione itself can be recycled, but if the toxic burden is too great, then it gets overwhelmed. So if we are able to implement some of these interventions, we can help our own body to detoxify. So firstly, we can do that by increasing one of those building blocks, which is cysteine. So N-acetylcysteine is a compound that is sold in supplement form. In hospitals, they use it in case of liver toxicity. It's also a mucus thinner, so it's used for cystic fibrosis to thin out the mucus. But in any event, that compound can be helpful to our own glutathione pathways. Milk thistle, the liver herb, prevents depletion of glutathione. And one of my stories I tell about milk thistle is that it's such a good liver herb. In Germany, they have hundreds of years of herbal use, and they actually use milk thistle IV if someone were to get amanita mushroom poisoning or poisonous mushroom. In Germany, they would use IV milk thistle, and the person would be okay. Here in America, the person just, no such luck. So I think if we are more forward-thinking, perhaps one day that will be in the hospital in IV use as well. Whey protein powder is a rich source of L-cysteine, again helping glutathione. Sulforaphanes are compounds that are produced in the body from intake of cruciferous vegetables. We're going to go through more of that in a minute. It's also a precursor to glutathione. Other vitamins and minerals, exercise, alpha-lipoic acid all boost glutathione. So that's something that we can all do to help reduce our own toxic burden and reduce the 80% incidence of cancer that's related to that exposure. So I mentioned sulforaphanes briefly before. Again, they're an identified anti-cancer compound found in cruciferous vegetables. That's going to be your broccoli, your Brussels sprouts, your cauliflower, your mustard greens. There's a very high amount in broccoli sprouts, which is like alfalfa sprouts, but it's broccoli sprouts. So one study that put this on the map was a 2005 study, and they went into a high amount of cancer in a certain village in Qidong, China. And basically these villages are loaded with factories and high excretion amounts of aflatoxin. And a lot of the residents had a high hepatocellular carcinoma rate from just being around these compounds. So they went into the village and they gave 200 people hot water infusions of 3-day-old broccoli sprouts. And they noticed that there was a marked reduction in aflatoxin DNA in their urine and a robust increase in detoxification metabolites as well. So just 2 weeks of broccoli sprouts and the folks were processing the toxins much better, thereby decreasing their cancer risk. Since then, there's been a lot more studies on sulforaphanes, and a lot of this research is coming out of Johns Hopkins in Maryland. I think these researchers have done an abundance of studies on sulforaphanes, and they have found other things as well. It's a potent inducer of phase 2 antioxidant enzymes. That's a detoxification pathway that renders toxins harmless. So we all need more of things that induce phase 2 antioxidant enzyme systems. It's also protection against upper airway inflammation from airborne pollution, so reducing things like asthma in reaction to pollution. One study showed it inhibited breast carcinogenesis in an animal model and a human pilot study. That study was able to demonstrate that the sulforaphane detox compounds were able to make it into the breast tissue and exert a protective benefit. And also has been shown to reduce H. pylori, which is a risk factor for gastric cancer, as well as gastritis. So, one more thing is you can grow them very easily. I put a picture here of a sprout kit, and it just takes 3 to 5 days. The 3-day broccoli sprouts are really strong. They're really peppery. I try to eat them, but I think 4 or 5 days are more edible. Certainly still very high in the compounds and easy enough to grow in your house, just with some water, some sprouts, and some shaking around of the water and the sprouts. That's a technical how-to. In pill form, you can get the compound sulforaphane glucosinolate, and I did notice that same bottle is back there. So we share a good taste in supplements. The study benefits are on the list again, and just showing more in another way, just the benefits of detoxification of the sulforaphanes. So I'm really excited about this as a potential directly anti-carcinogenic addition to our diets. I recommend this to as many people as I can. However, some people, where I work is definitely in the middle of people who are getting chemotherapy and radiation treatment or perhaps surgical recovery. And in that modality, we can't always do all the liver detox we want. Some things will interact with other things. So it is exciting to be giving a talk on prevention where we pretty much have free reign to add in what we want. It can be a more specialized study of what to give people in my situation every day. So if you guys are, just a note about supplement quality, here are some things I look for, some general things that can help pick out a good supplement versus a supplement I might avoid. You can look for natural versions of vitamin E. Mixed tocopherols as a vitamin E is going to be more helpful than a synthetic E, which would be DL-alpha tocopherol. Even so, for years, when I was in medical school a long time ago, DL-alpha was the bad guy, and we told everyone to have D-alpha tocopherol. And then only, lo and behold, to find that just the D-alpha tocopherol is not good enough. You need to have the gamma and the delta and the beta tocopherol in there. And I think the next thing coming is they're going to say we need the tocotrienols in there with the tocopherols, but now they're in separate supplements. But we're doing what we can. Right now, the mixed tocopherols are definitely better than just the single agent E. The beta carotene would be great if it were natural from a palm source, an algae source, or even if it just says natural beta carotene, it's going to be better than, again, a synthetic beta carotene, which is sort of like a margarinized version of it that your body doesn't really know how to process. Fish oil would be excellent if it were pharmaceutically distilled to remove the heavy metals. It should say that on the label. If it does not say that, it's not a product that you want because it won't be doing you any good full of heavy metals from the bottom of the ocean. Consumer Lab is a third-party lab that tests consumer products and makes sure that they have high enough amounts of what they say they have and low enough amounts of other things in them. They kind of, the supplement quality is getting better as years go on. In 2007, current manufacturing practices came on board with the FDA, which set a template for high-quality manufacturing rules for supplements. So that things have improved since then. There's some other third-party seals that you can get on your products, but the companies have to pay a fee for that. It doesn't mean it's a bad product if it doesn't have those seals of approval, but if they're on there, it's a little bit more validating. Now I'm just going to move into a little bit more about lifestyle suggestions and talk a little bit about the research about stress and cancer. In terms of cancer progression, 2 things have been studied to show they would influence cancer progression. Chronic hopelessness and pessimism is something that if someone already has cancer, seems to contribute towards progression of cancer. And social isolation and lack of support also seems to be something that contributes towards cancer progression. So those things can be helped. You know, if folks are in those situations and they're aware that they are having a direct effect on their health, those things can be got. I think there's people, there's groups, there's services out there to help those situations. Studied factors that are shown to increase the risk of the incidence of breast cancer are disruption in marriage due to death or divorce of a spouse, death of a close friend or family member, They have been studied to show an increased risk of breast cancer incidence. So it's a good time to really get support if any of these situations have happened, emotional support, which would directly affect your health as well. Some other tools that have been studied to be helpful to help stress are Qigong, yoga, and meditation. There have been numerous studies on these things. I'm just going to highlight a few recent ones. In a 2013 study on breast cancer and radiation, Qigong was shown to improve quality of life in women undergoing radiation for this condition. The women in the study reported less depressive symptoms over time than the control group, especially in women who were already depressed. There was a study on yoga and sleep, and shown that women who were on hormone therapy with breast cancer who did yoga had a statistically significant change in improvement in their sleep. So many good things that yoga is for. That's just another one. An interesting one is meditation. This was an 8-week pilot study of daily yogic meditation versus relaxation in mildly depressed elderly caregivers of dementia patients. And the intervention group practiced Kundalini yoga with Kirtan Kriya meditation for 12 minutes daily, and the placebo group listened to a relaxation CD for the same length of time. And the measures of depression, mental health, cognitive function, and telomerase activity were assessed. And the results were exceedingly good for just 12 minutes of meditation. Depression was 65% versus 31% improvement, 50 versus 19 for overall mental health. And the telomerase activity, 43% versus 3.7%. So telomerase is an idea I'd like to explain for just a minute. Telomeres are protective caps on the end of chromosomes that stabilize the genome. And with each cell division, the telomere is shortened until the chromosome is compromised. And at that point, the cell dies. Systemically and over a lifespan, abnormal telomere shortening can predict risk factors for chronic diseases such as cardiovascular health and cancer. The opportunity to improve health lies in preventing abnormal telomere shortening, and that enzyme telomerase preserves the length. And they've noticed from a variety of studies that they can study this and things affect this. For example, a lack of sleep and stressful life events will shorten telomere length, whereas greater than 2.5 hours of strenuous exercise per week, high vegetable intake, keratin-rich foods, multivitamin use, and fiber have all been associated with longer telomeres. And that's a good thing. And the last slide, just talking again about meditation. In a more intensive meditation practice of budding monks-to-be, they discovered that if they did 6 hours of meditation for 3 months, there were significantly higher telomerase activity, also increases in perceived control, decreases in neuroticism, which we all could use, increases in mindfulness, and increases in a purpose of life in the intervention group. So some meditation is helpful, even more seems to be even better. So thank you very much. We're going to have questions and answers and snacks of these great recipes, so stay tuned. But yeah, and if you have any questions, please feel free. For any of us.
We know you guys have questions.
I have a question about sugar. What is your position on substitutes like stevia, for example?
It sometimes is difficult to choose a good one, but I would say that stevia is going to be your best choice. Almost all of your other synthetic artificial sweeteners, such as aspartame, sucralose, saccharin, cyclamate, all of those have at least one detrimental study associated with it. So again, in small amounts, it's probably not an immediate concern, but if you're going to put something into heavy use, I would probably use stevia as my best choice. Agave is going to be a good choice as well. It does still contain some sugary calories, but it's a much more natural source of sugar and often contains some biochemical benefit too. So, small amounts and enjoy the flavor of the food.
What did you say was the best one?
The stevia.
What about saccharin? That's
I would say it's probably better than saccharin, but almost all artificial sweeteners, I mean, we don't have hundreds of years of study proving its safety.
stevia.
Stevia is what is definitely your best choice.
I noticed in the stevia, they're coming out with all these brands and they have dextrose and all this other stuff in there too.
And typically it's a small amount of dextrose that's more like a filler to help the consistency and the packaging be.
And inulin or something like that, I think is in there. What's that?
Basically,
Could you repeat the question?
oh, what is the question was about the dextrose that we're finding in some of the study of products. The second question was, what is the inulin? And actually that's a type of fermentable fiber called a fructooligosaccharide, and there's actually some health benefit to the inulin. So, but either way, it should be in very small quantities if it's actually in the study of product.
You know, you talked about all the supplements, and right now my supplement box is full. I mean, how many supplements do you take besides eating healthy? Is there?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of supplements, it's always best to get a customizable plan. So any good supplement recommendation is going to include things that you have risk factors for or need strengthening on or have suboptimal health with. So if you focus on those areas with the supplements and with diet and with lifestyle, that is the best place to go. Although if you walk into a health food store, it's icing on the cake. You know, this is good, this is good, this is good. I always recommend a personalized consult for your areas of need, and that could include, you know, some of the more progressive genetic testing or just a good health history in terms of what you really need.
I've always heard that you should take vitamin D, but then recently they say you shouldn't. I mean, do you have any insight into?
Yeah, there's been a real explosion of vitamin D research in the last 20 years. And, you know, in the beginning, the research was, you know, we need more, we're all deficient in vitamin D and we weren't even aware about it. A lot of the studies with vitamin D, more specific to cancer, have focused on looking at across a population, where that research is not seen to be as good as, you know, taking two groups of people and you offer one group one option and another group another option. So I would say that there has been some concern about trying to make our vitamin D levels too high. But I think the most reasonable approach is to first ask your healthcare provider to test your vitamin D level, and then you know where you're at. Then you'll know if the supplement is appropriate, and if so, how much.
My father-in-law is actually a cancer patient. I did bring my husband with me. He stepped out, unfortunately, so he's not here to hear me ask this question. But I've been preaching, he's 4 years now, but he's going through maintenance chemo. And health deteriorating, you know, we see it very much. But I have preached since the day he was diagnosed, diet. And, you know, I get I'm always told, well, you know, the doctor didn't say that he had to eat different, you know. And I keep telling him that, well, no, they're probably not. They're you know, talking about and I understand the need for medicine. So all of these things that you talk about here were preventatives, but they're also key for somebody that's going through it, correct?
They're equally important for somebody actively going through cancer treatment, and even more important for someone who's surviving cancer because of that increased risk of dealing with cancer earlier.
So how do we convince them?
That's not big.
That's the challenge. That's the challenge.
Actually, my father, at the hospital, they started his first chemo treatment, and they told him not to have any antioxidants and all that stuff. That did not make sense to me. Is that?
Yeah, I don't know if Deb wants to
Well-
respond to this as well, but in the past, many chemotherapy agents or chemo drugs worked to cause oxidative damage to the cancer cells. So the thought process was, well, if you're flooding your body with vitamin A or vitamin C as an antioxidant, would that negate the benefit of the chemotherapy? I've never seen research to suggest that a diet of food high in antioxidants has ever caused that effect. I've seen some studies where patients had fewer side effects when they consumed diet higher in plants.
Yeah, for the longest time, a lot of that was theoretical. If our mechanism of action is to create oxidative stress, then if we give antioxidants, we're going to protect the cancer cells. And what the studies are starting to show is that some substances, like curcumin from turmeric, can be chemotherapy potentiating. and supportive to the benefits of chemo while also protecting normal cells. So as more research comes out, it's more exciting, and it seems to dispel some of the fears that have been around for a really long time. But always more research is welcome too.
Thank you.
Alrighty, stop them.
Processing.
Yeah.
Diane, you want to come out? For those of you who have come to our classes before, you know that we do donate 100% of the proceeds to charity. And tonight, I have a friend, a patient, and someone we've been through a lot together.
Yes, we have.
This is Diane Shankwitz, and her organization that she started is Stylish Survivors, and that's the organization, nonprofit organization, in which that we'd like to donate the money. And I wanted Diane to just tell her story because she can tell it so much more beautifully than I can. But I've just been very honored to be a part of it in some ways.
A critical, important part of it, I must admit. So thank you so much for supporting us. And, you know, it ties in perfectly with what you've talked about today. The simple joys, simple steps that we take, relieving stress. The Stylish Survivor is about empowering women to nurture a positive self-image. If you've been through cancer, you know, the image is a hard thing. You go in one day, I went into the hospital with a wonderful, you know, hourglass figure. I came out with flat in my belly. So it's like, the belly's gotta stay small because I'm not gonna be some old man. You know, that's not gonna happen. So we change drastically. Now we have the American Cancer Society, which has the Look Good, Feel Better program, which is fabulous when you're going through treatments on how to look good, you know, use of colors. But there's this thing we don't talk about that happens about a year later, where we're supposedly healed and we're taking tamoxifen or whatever else, and we've gone through menopause, and all of a sudden we've gained 20 pounds, we lose 10 pounds, we gain 15 pounds, we lose 5 pounds, and we have night sweats, insomnia. Your body changes, and you want to get out there and do things, and you start hiding. And I've had the good fortune of mentoring a lot of cancer patients, also lead a cancer support group at a prison, and I've even found with them that the self-image is a really important thing. So what we're looking at is working with women, you know, taking a step back, what kind of body shape do I have? And really, how has it changed because of my new life? And maybe I have an asymmetric body. Maybe I've got reconstruction and I love it, but I still have weight issues or heat issues. So we're looking at, you know, for your body shape, how can you dress appropriately and in ways that really flatter you and make you feel comfortable? Because that's what it's all about. The more you can step forward and just put that positive presence out there, the more you're going to contribute to life. And you know, the sad thing is, the people around us who watched us, they sometimes love us more than we love ourselves. My husband thinks I'm more beautiful than I think I am. You know, and that's sad. So we want women to feel good about themselves, to smile at their future, and to really give them tools and active work sessions where they can develop that. So that's what you're helping support. And we're going to kick off October 10th with OSF St. Francis is having a breast cancer survivor event. It'll be advertised soon, and we're the keynote speaker for that. And then also in Decatur on October 9th. And all of this is volunteer-based. We're not taking any salaries or anything. This is just doing what needs to be done. So thanks for being part of it. And thank you so much for your support.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm from Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and on behalf of Kristen, Deb, and myself, we just wanted to thank you again for coming out today. It's an honor for us to be able to connect with you all this evening. As you came in the door, you were able to sign up to win the raffle. The recipes that Kristen discussed in her portion of the presentation are actually the samples you have in the bag that you were given. You guys have willpower because the last presentation, they started eating them right away. So I hope that you all enjoy them as much as the last group. But just so you know, there are recipe cards in the bag you receive. So if you enjoy the recipes, feel free to make the recipe at home. They come from a Wholesome Temptations cookbook that we're going to be raffling off today. It's a collection of recipes that was compiled by executive chefs and dietitians across our 5 hospitals across the country. Also, we're raffling off, it's a salad bowl, little salad tong things. I don't know the technical terms. Water bottle, a towel, yeah. So yeah, and the winner is Amy Becker. Yay! So if you'll come up, congratulations. And then if you have any additional questions that you weren't able to ask during the Q&A session, feel free to come up and chat with Deb and Kristen as well. Thank you.
Where is Cancer Centers of America?
Our hospital is located in Zion, Illinois, so it's about 50 miles north of Chicago. So we road tripped here today. It was very fun. And if you have any questions about our hospital as well, we're happy to answer those questions too. Thanks.
Thank you.